Brandin Bryant is a seasoned professional athlete, entrepreneur, author, and advocate for mental health and performance. Born in Omaha, Nebraska, Brandon's journey began at Fort Scott Community College before transferring to Florida Atlantic University, FAU, where he majored in communication studies while excelling on the football field as a four-year starter. After graduating from FAU, Brandon entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent, embarking on an impressive 8-year career in professional football. Alongside his athletic pursuits, Brandon demonstrated his entrepreneurial spirit by franchising a Merry Maids location, which earned the prestigious Rookie of the Year award within the entire international network. Expanding his horizons, Brandon delved into the world of literature, publishing his debut children's book, So You Want to Be an Athlete, in January 2024. Drawing from his own experiences, Brandon uses his platform to inspire and educate young minds about the challenges and rewards of pursuing athletic dreams. Outside of his professional endeavors, Brandon is deeply committed to giving back to his alma mater, FAU, where he volunteers with the football program. In this capacity, he assists with player development, recruiting, and coaching the defensive line, embodying his dedication to nurturing the next generation of athletes. In addition to his work with FAU, Brandon is a sought-after speaker at universities nationwide, where he shares insights from his book and addresses topics related to mental health and performance. Through his speaking engagements, Brandon aims to foster dialogue and support around these issues, these important issues, empowering individuals to achieve their full potential on and off the field. So, Brandon, thank you so much for joining. Glad to have you. Once again, really appreciate you hopping on the show today.
Glad to be here, Cameron. Thanks for having me. I'm super
Absolutely.
excited, man.
Absolutely. We just to kind of kick this off, if we kind of started this off by talking about our connection. It was actually via LinkedIn. And when I was working for a tech company about 3-4 years ago, I reached out and connected with you when you were working with Merry Maids. Ours was in the hourly employee workforce and helping Merry Maids and other businesses in the franchise actually help to bring on better employees that were like your top performers. Not sure that we ever ended up working together, but that's actually how
Yeah.
we got connected
Yeah.
initially.
Well, that shows the power of LinkedIn and just staying in touch and the power of that application. So
It
yeah.
absolutely does. It absolutely does. You said you're out of the country today, right?
Yeah, I'm actually so me and my wife just had our first son, but we had him in Toronto because it's where she's from. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So yeah, we came up here to have him and he can't he can't travel until he gets his passport and citizenship. So been up here for about a month and some change. We'll
Cool.
be coming down at the end of July. But yeah, been up here for a while, Toronto.
So have you been back and forth, or have you been up in Toronto for the full month?
So I got up here early May, and then I had to go to New York City for some things, and then back to Florida. And that was maybe like a 10-day trip all together, and then came straight back. So
Got it.
the
Got it.
brunt of it, I've been here. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So you've, I mean, we could go back super early into your career, kind of, I guess we could go back to even the early days, right? If you want to go back there. But what was maybe, I guess maybe a good question to start this off is why did you end up picking football as a sport? I'm assuming you probably played other sports, maybe not, maybe it was always football, but why did you kind of stick with and end up with football?
Man, so one, I come from a football family. Grandpa, dad, uncles, everybody played, cousins, football city, Omaha.
Yeah.
But I actually started off running track. So I was a track runner, was real good, like junior Olympic champion. But I kind of outgrew it like physically. Like, I got too big because I was a sprinter, sprinted
Yeah.
the 100, 200, long jump, all that. Then, got to the point where, I was a big kid. So, the sprinters were, getting faster and faster, and I was getting bigger and bigger. So went from a sprinter playing running back to a linebacker and a tight end, and then the rest is history. Just started to stick with it, saw some growth, liked it, enjoyed it, and I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. It was a lot of opportunity to get scholarships and to get your education paid for. So that helped. And all my friends were football players too. So we just kind of stuck together and made it happen.
That works. Did you play a bunch of positions in high school, or did you kind of stick to, one thing the entire time?
I came in as a running back, then
Okay.
fullback, running back. Fullback's a dime position, but I played that. Then tight end, linebacker, D end. Didn't actually play D tackle until I got to FAU. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a new thing for me.
Cool. Cool. I actually started off as a defensive end. Not that anybody cares, but I actually started off as a defensive end, and I still to this day I think I had more fun playing defensive end and cornerback than anything else. But ended up as a kicker because definitely not a big kid. So I was like, I want to play varsity. What's the best way to play varsity? And they were like, well, we've got a kicker position open. I was like, well, that's for me. So I'll choose that.
Yeah, man. D line's fun, man. It's
Yeah,
never a dull moment. You're always in the action. It's you literally can't take a play off. Like some of these safeties,
ever.
corners, receive. Yeah, you can't
Yeah,
take a play off. So
cool.
real exciting position.
I love it. And then getting into FAU, obviously stuck with D end, and then into the NFL. You looks like you played for. I know you played for a number of different teams. Who all of you played for, and I guess who are you? What's kind of your situation currently?
So came in the league,
Okay,
Seahawks. Um,
cool.
went to the Jets after that. Got injured with the Jets, sat out my whole second year. Then I went to the CFL, Winnipeg, and Montreal. Came back down to the league, Cleveland. Stayed in Cleveland for a year. Got my first actual regular season experience in Cleveland. Played there, did well. Then went to the Miami Dolphins. Then the Buffalo Bills for 3 years, and then most recently with the New York Giants. I'm currently a free agent.
Love it. Love it. Do you have a favorite? I mean, you were with the Bills for the longest period of time. Is there like kind of a favorite of the teams?
Yeah, I would have to say I would have to go with the Bills just because
Okay.
the relationships I built there for the amount of
Yeah.
time I was there, the friends I had. Just getting to know everybody, being there so long. It's just it was a good experience for sure.
Yeah. So you're Bills Nation all the way, which is
Man, as long as I got some good friends still playing there. So as long as those
yeah.
guys are there, man, I'm rooting for them. I'm
I
rooting for
gotcha.
them. So
I
yeah,
gotcha. I love it. I love it. We kind of already hit on this in your bio a little bit, but obviously the mental health aspect of going from and trying to figure. I'm sure like going from college and then getting into the league, there's a huge mental element to that. Not all I only played in high school, so I have no idea what college the athletics were like personally. But I can only imagine they're tough. But what is kind of like that mental hurdle from going from like high school to college and then college into pro ball, and how different is each element?
yeah, it's like a big W. You start off, all excited, ready to go, and then back to earth, back up, good play. Just nonstop up and down. Like the stock market. So
Yep.
you gotta you just gotta learn to deal with it because it is what it is. It's what you signed up for. But you gotta learn how to stay neutral, man. You can't get too excited. You can't get too down on yourself because with each level, the competition increases and the demand for your demand, what you're required to do increases. So
Yeah.
it's a huge roller coaster.
Yeah. And so like I guess staying motivated during that time, what was what did you do for yourself to stay motivated throughout those periods, especially the downs, right? Because when we all
Yeah,
get up, we get down. It's just a
yeah.
constant in life, right? But how did you stay motivated during those downs?
I would say I was just looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, and
Yep.
maybe that's not the right thing to do. You probably should, live in the moment. But initially, you're always looking like, okay, I'm in college. I'm not a starter. I got to get there. So you know what you're doing to become a starter, and it kind of helps you ignore or at least deal with everything that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Maybe you've been going since 7:30 and you don't get home until 10 at night for camp in college, but the light at the end of the tunnel is I'll be a starter, and then I'm one step closer to my goal, my dream, which is getting drafted to the NFL. And then the same thing once you get to the end of college, like okay, I'm almost there. Then you
Yeah.
get to the league, and it's the same thing. Like, okay, I'm an undrafted free agent. I got to make the team. So just keeping those goals in mind, those short-term goals and those long-term goals, they help you deal with all the daily stressors.
Yeah. I mean, like, so then you mentioned you got injured with the Jets, right?
Yeah, yep,
So then I mean, once again, you go through these ups and downs, and then you throw an injury into the mix, and you throw, life into the mix and everything else, right? So I mean, what's kind of your message that you push? Because if you're obviously a huge mental health advocate across the board, what's your, general message to these guys? I mean, girls too that are playing sports. I'm sure you talk to a mixture of the two, but with guys, especially as they're in the league or figuring things out in college and trying to get into the league, what's your general message to those folks?
man. One, like I said, which is the challenge is living in the moment, staying in the moment.
Yeah,
Knowing be where you are, being where your feet are. If I'm injured, okay, how do I navigate this situation? I got to go to rehab. I got to eat better. I got to take better care of my body, and I got to be mindful of the situation, and also aware of my mental health, and not too worried about off the distant future, which is ironic because that's what I said kept me motivated. But
yeah,
when you're injured, it's a completely different ballgame. And then just staying positive. We have so many negative thoughts every day, just naturally. every time you have a negative thought, try to beat it out with, two or three positive thoughts. And, you
Yeah.
have to be intentional about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. You so I'm assuming you're still working out on a daily basis, especially as a free agent. What does that look like right now for you? I mean, as you're kind of figuring out your next step, are you, because I mean, you're absolutely an entrepreneur. You've run a business. You've been very successful with that. You've been an athlete. You've been very successful with that. As you're kind of in this, this free agent period right now, what are kind of your thoughts on your next steps?
So, like I said, what my advice to other people is,
Yeah.
I gotta take my own advice. Stay in the moment. Um, be where my feet are. Can't worry too much about what's gonna happen. Either, I can only control what I can control.
Yeah.
So, I'm staying in shape. I, work out 4 or 5 times a week. Eat right. Stay in the weight room. Stay on top of my drill. So if the opportunity comes, then I'm ready for it.
I love it. I love it.
Excuse me.
Um, why Merry Maids? We can go to that one real quick. How did you pick up on? I mean, like there's a bunch of different franchises out there. So why Merry Maids?
The cost of entry was reasonable.
Okay,
The franchise had a good reputation. We talked to some owners in the area; they were very happy with how the franchise operated. And just being in South Florida, people are very accustomed in South Florida to having
yeah,
maid service in their homes. So the demand for maid service in South Florida is extremely high. So it was a good business for the location and for the timing. And we sat down, we talked about it. Like I said, we met with some local Merry Maids, existing franchisees, and they had nothing but good things to say. So we're like, let's go for it.
yeah. And obviously, it ended up being a heck of a decision for you.
Yeah,
It worked out pretty well for you at the end of the day.
yeah, it worked out well. Yeah, it
Cool.
worked out well.
Just from a business perspective, did you sell the business? How did that? Are you still what's where are you at with Merry Maids now?
So actually, man, it was a crazy situation with
Okay,
COVID and everything. So everything was going on during COVID. People wouldn't let us in their homes.
gotcha.
Anytime someone sneezed or coughed, they called us. They're like, hey, get this person out of my house. So
Yeah,
it was like they call it an act of God.
yeah.
That we had to sadly get out and sell the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think people, once again, like you've obviously been super successful across the board, but people don't see that side of it, and they don't really talk about it much. I feel like, and I think it's really good for people like yourself to be able to show people and express that to them and be like, hey, this is the real element of this too,
Yeah,
right? Where like
yeah,
you can go crush it, you can absolutely go crush it, but there's also this element to be aware of at the end of the day. But it should not keep you from going out there and chasing your dreams and taking risks and doing these
ex-
things. So,
exactly. I agree.
so I, yeah, so I just in that in kind of talking to that a little bit, for people that are considering maybe not the NFL because they don't have the ability to be in the NFL, which is the vast majority of us, by the way. It's about 99.999% of the population. Even though we'd all love to be in the NFL, but for those that are like considering taking a risk on a business, maybe what is kind of some advice you'd give to them as they're thinking through buying a franchise or buying a business or starting something new. But it's kind of just like some general advice you'd give to them as they're thinking through that process.
One, I would say, of course, you got to be all in. That's a huge decision to make. Not only are you're going to have to, commit a large portion of capital towards it, but you're going to have to commit, the brunt of your time to it as
Yeah,
well. We live in an area where people are kind of, downplaying, the traditional 9 to 5. Nobody wants to work a 9 to 5. Everybody wants to be a boss. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. But there's nothing wrong with, working a job, and being an entrepreneur isn't for everyone. It's very hard. It's very time consuming. So make sure it's something that you actually want to do and it's something you enjoy. And most of the cliches are true. If you don't have a passion for it, don't do it because it's going to come a point in time you're like, why am I doing this? But if you're passionate about it, whatever that is, then now that's another reason to get started on it. But just do all your homework. Talk to existing franchisees. Survey the land, see if it's actually a good business for the area you're in. Get a team together as well because you can't do all this stuff on your own. No matter who you think you are, if whatever you are, your micromanager, whatever. Get a team together and a plan, and then attack it from there.
so what you're saying is basically it'll humble you real quick if you're
Oh, for
not.
sure,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
no.
And it's
So
it's but
yeah, I was just saying, you mentioned people that you need to like add to your team. Who would you consider adding to your team? Because I'd say friends and family are great, but who would you really add to your team? to make sure you're successful?
Man, so I would definitely ask someone who has skin in the game, especially when you're getting started. If I'm gonna be putting a bunch of capital up, I would expect my partner to be putting some capital up as well because like I said, it's gonna get tough. And if I'm 99%, you're 1%, it's easy for that 1% to just pack it up and walk away. So I'm gonna get with someone who has some skin in the game. We both have something equal to lose, and we're both equally driven and equally hungry, and we work well together.
Yeah,
Because it can sound good throughout the planning when you're getting everything together and you're writing everything on paper, but once things really get flowing, that's when you really get to know your partners and yourself as well.
yeah, 100%, 100%. I feel like there's a lot of people that, once again, to your point, it's a cliche, and people think being an entrepreneur is super sexy. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, you see a part of it, but you don't see all of it at all. Just like being in the NFL, that's super sexy. Nobody's gonna lie here, right? It's super cool to be in the NFL. But at the end of the day, you're waking up super early, training your ass off, getting to where you are, and you're doing it constantly. And I used to say too, because I went to a military college, and the guys that were the athletes there typically got out of a lot of the like military stuff for us. But at the end of the day, looking back on it, they had it twice as hard because they were waking up super early. They were going to work out, and they were then coming back and doing military stuff in addition to the actual football workouts or athletic workouts at the end of the day. So I think doing what it takes, or becoming what it takes in order to be successful is kind of a huge part of that. So when you think about kind of your college days and your NFL days and your business days, um, what do you think have been kind of the things that have made you successful across the board? When you think about, consistency and working out and doing all these things, right? Like what is it that's made you successful through those ups and downs?
And two things come to mind. Two, just belief in myself, and sometimes it's kind of it might be even just far gone, like just me believing in myself with no even like proof of why I believe in myself.
Yep.
And then two, just consistency, man. It's just I've always believed that that I was gonna start, I was gonna go to the NFL, all these things. I believed it, even literally. Like they say, if people don't think you're crazy when you say your dreams, then you're not dreaming high enough. Like literally, my high school coach was like, "Man, like you're not going to the NFL, man. Like be real." And I heard that time and time again, but I literally didn't care. I believed it, no matter who told me. And then two, consistency. I'm very, a routine person. I do the same things every day. I do the same thing again and again every day. So, those two things carried me tremendously, throughout my path to the NFL. And, just staying positive as well. I would have to say that's the third thing that, that ties in with belief because it's gonna come a point in time where you're like, you know, like I got cut over like 8 times, but I just had to stay positive and believe that, this is everything happened for a reason and that, this all was part of a bigger plan.
Absolutely. You mentioned doing consistency and doing the same things over and over again on a daily basis. What's your routine? What's the routine of an NFL athlete on a daily basis that gets you to that point, right? Because I feel like I can be consistent. I can wake up at a certain time in the morning. I can go to the gym. I can work out. I can take my protein. I can take creatine, put it out there. I can take whatever I can take, right? I'm not doing steroids, obviously not. But at the end of the day, I can do these things to try to get bigger and to try to get stronger and faster and become a better human being, but also a better business person. But what are those things that you do on a daily basis just to become the most optimal version of yourself?
Um, so let's go with the off season because I think that's a little,
Yeah,
a little more, easier to speak on. So, you know, Monday through Friday, I'm simple, man. I'm waking up at 7:30, 8, whatever. I'm going to FAU. I live in Boca, and I'm working out with the team. I'm working out with those guys because I know a college football workout is much harder than an NFL workout. You can ask anybody. So it's like if I can do this up to my, seventh, eighth year in the NFL, it's going to pay off. So I wake up 7, 8:30, eat breakfast, go to FAU, get it in with the guys, working out with a bunch of 19, 20 year olds. And I do that 5 times a week. Whatever they do, I do. Take, very, very cognizant of what I'm putting in my body. I've never been someone to drink alcohol or smoke or anything like that. So I think that actually helped as well. And then the recovery, you notice that once you get older, it's all about recovery. So if I'm working out, I'm recovering twice as hard. I go get in the Normatec boots, get in the coat to go do some yoga, stretch, even just go on a walk on the beach. Just working on all those little muscles. And then in the weekend, just being cognizant of my sleep. not out till 3, 4 in the morning. Now, going out, getting home at 4 and waking up at 8.
Yeah.
I'll go to sleep, set a bedtime, set a wake up time. I'll go to sleep at 10:30. Wake up at 8 on the weekends and maybe go fishing. So keep it simple. And I think just those
Yeah.
steady things, man, just every day, and you just get better and better, and not hurting yourself as well with the partying and alcohol definitely
Yeah.
helps.
I think that's a huge piece. But you mentioned you fish too.
Yeah, I fish inshore. I'm not too much a fan of,
Okay.
I'm not scared of boats or being way out there in the ocean, but I
Yeah.
have much more fun just inshore, with my little fishing pole, and getting to work, catch some snappers, some snooks,
Is that like your
sheepshead, whatever.
meditation to a certain degree, or do you like actually meditate? Like, what's the thing
Oh
you
yeah,
do to like really chill out at the end of the day?
so I meditate. I try to
Okay.
meditate at least like nothing crazy, maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes a day,
Yeah.
and just get some breathing in. But just and I like I said, I live in Boca, so if you're in Southeast Florida, you're never further than 25 minutes from the beach. But
Yeah.
I actually live like a 5 minute ride from the beach, so I just go to the beach, sit there, and just relax, man. And that's just how you connect with nature, connect with yourself, and just breathe, man. So
The
it
way to
might
do
sound
it.
corny, but yeah, but it's cool. And then when you're fishing, you just out there, man. You just get lost in the waves.
Well, I think so many people try to overcomplicate it, right? It's like at the end of the day, like if you can just like get out in your front yard, work in your yard, get outside, get on the beach, do something in nature to relax too. And I think I'm not sure what it's like for an NFL athlete and an entrepreneur like yourself, but there's obviously so much going on in the world, whether it relates to politics or wars in other countries and all these other things going on too. And I often think I'm like, do guys that are playing professional sports and people that are super busy, do they think about any of these other things? Like the vast majority of these guys just narrow in and dial into what they're doing and close out everything else? Because I feel like you kind of have to in order to be successful, right? So
Yeah,
do you still kind of think about those things, or is it just pretty much sports? Is it football all the time and business all the time for you?
think it's important to stay current on current events, but I think for the
Yeah,
most part, once you're locked in on the season, and you're there from like I said, you're there from 7 in the morning. It's a regular job, 9 to 5. You
yeah,
might get there at 7 and you leave at 4:30, 5:30. But then you go home and maybe you watch film, and maybe some guys do yoga, Pilates, whatever. So
yeah,
a lot of guys really don't have time to cut on the news and see everything that's going on. But
yeah.
so you kind of are, during the football season, you're kind of like oblivious to a lot of stuff that's going on, which isn't good. I would definitely
It's a
recommend.
great, it's a great, it's a great thing.
Yeah,
You don't need, you don't need
yeah,
it's a great,
yeah, but you still want to know, man. You still,
yeah,
you don't want to just be clueless to, a war going on,
yeah,
across the country that will affect you one way or another. So,
yeah.
but yeah, you definitely are. So you are kind of just unaware of a lot of things going on. It's throughout those like 17 weeks, but you gotta intentionally lock in on it, and maybe subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. I don't know, whatever guys you got to do to get that
Yeah.
information.
Subscribe to something to get some information, but it's just like, anyways, we can get on that rabbit hole. I won't take you there
Yeah.
today. That's plenty of my friends know I could go there really quick. And I think that's like because kind of the frustration, for a lot of us too, is like, we dial in and it's like, hey, stay consistent, be consistent. But we are bombarded with so much information on a daily basis. I mean, the fact that we have a cell phone that gives us information like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I think it adds an interesting element to the mental health piece that you were talking about too, where it's like a lot of these guys are trying to dial into their craft and become the best version they can possibly be at the position they're trying to be, they're working on. Yet we're being bombarded with life situations, but also global situations as well. That was never an issue before, right? I mean, this is not an
Yeah.
issue for football players 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They didn't really know. They knew about it, but they didn't know about everything instantaneously.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to kind of know, like, how maybe it's impacted people, maybe it's talked about on a daily basis, maybe people don't talk about it at all. So just curious.
Yeah.
Um, on the book front, so you wrote a book, two books.
2 books. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Two
What
books.
was what was kind of the motivation for the books? I mean, like, what was, the reason for going down that road?
Yeah. So the second one I'll actually be announcing. I'm not sure when you're going to air this, but the second one I'll be announcing July 17th.
Okay.
So that one's going to come out August 28th, which is National Dog Day.
Okay.
Super excited about that. It's called "Can I Pet That Dog?" It's about bite prevention and just consent. From kids to obviously ask the owner of the dog, can they approach and pet the dog before they just run up and start licking his face or whatever.
Yeah.
But the first one, so you want to be an athlete. I actually, man, I wrote this book in 2020 during COVID, and it was just, as everyone knows, man, during COVID, we talk about news and national news
Yeah.
and chaos and all that, but you're stuck at home, so there was no football, there was no basketball, nothing like that. So everything that was going on was like being blasted in front of us. So
Yeah.
I saw something throughout that time about literacy and how the lack of literacy in our nation and how these stats can affect children being illiterate. You're more likely to fall under the teenage pregnancy category. You're more likely to be homeless, special education, more likely to be incarcerated. So I'm like, dang, this is something this extreme, and everyone's just talking about. How come nobody's doing it? Nothing. So I thought, okay, well, I gotta take my own advice and do something. So, what better way than to write a children's book myself to try to encourage kids to read and, to be literate. So, I started writing. I wrote maybe like 8 books throughout that time. And I actually didn't even publish this book. So that was 2020. And I published it January of 2024. So, the inspiration happened during COVID. I wrote it during COVID, but it's a long process to publish a book. It wasn't a 4-year process, but just getting connected to the right people and just educating myself on the process, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You don't want to just jump into something
Yeah.
without knowing what's going on. So, I learned the game, learned the business, and got to work last July, and then during January, boom, it got on the shelf. So
Was there
here
a
we are.
point where you considered not publishing it, where you were just like, I've written these things, I'm just like, I might publish it, I might not at this point?
Yeah, yeah, because I contacted, man, I probably contacted like 200 different like publishers or whatever, or literary agents, and literally it's one of those things where they probably I read somewhere that maybe like 8,000 books get published every day. I don't know if that was just in the USA or in the world. So if 8,000 books get published, imagine how many emails these companies get with someone with their book or the manuscript. So no one really got back to me. Maybe one company got back to me, and then the second time they didn't get back to me. So I was like, well, I tried, whatever. And then, just came over and I'm like, man, I gotta like this I gotta practice what I preach, man. You gotta make it happen. So I
So
decided to actually self-publish
200
it.
folks, 200
And
publishers.
I Googled everything you could Google, every
Yeah,
literary agent, every publishing house, and everyone an email. No one got back to me. But it's
that's
probably,
crazy.
maybe it's in their junk folder. Maybe it was my email with 3,000 other emails that same day. So you never know.
It's just, but like that's just like that's the power of consistency, though, which people talk about all the time. They're like, oh well, I tried to do this thing. It's like, well, how many emails did you send? How many calls did you make? Did you reach out to that
Yeah,
person, right? And I think that's one of those things where like not many people really realize how much work it takes to get to that point. Same thing with like playing sports and being consistent to be able to get to the NFL. Obviously, that takes a bunch of work to be able to get to that point. But even in writing a book, it's not like just because you're in the NFL and just because you have this name brand because you have followers online, it makes it that much easier. Like it still takes a lot of work too.
yeah.
Um, obviously. So the person that you connected with, I guess what was kind of what was the reason that they like when they connected with you and when you connected with them, what was kind of the reason they were like, okay, let's move forward and publish at this point?
So I self-published. So
Okay.
that was so I did have some help through what they call an independent press company.
Okay.
The company I use is called Palmetto Publishing.
Okay.
So Palmetto actually helped me, they introduced me to an illustrator, helped me with copywriting, give me an ISBN, interior formatting, cover formatting, all that. But everything's up to me. I have complete creative control. It's just packages they offer. So you can, pay them and then, they help you with that service. And then, you're on your own to market it, they help you with distributing, but everything with the book is marketing. So, that's a huge skill that
Yeah.
I've learned just social media marketing. I actually continuing on the skills I learned from Merry Maids as well. But yeah, man, it was it's a true self published project, man. And that's another thing we talk about knowing what you're getting into before you get into it. Like you said, you're
Yeah.
not just gonna publish a book and say, hey, NFL player, and then shoot to a New York Times bestseller. Maybe if you're you know somebody else, Aaron Donald or Tom Brady, maybe so. But for most of us, you still
I
you
mean, if
still
you know
you
those
still
guys, I mean, just reach out and be like, "Hey, Tom, come on, man! Like, give me just a quick
yeah.
social media shout out. It's easy."
Hey, Josh Allen. If you listen to Josh Allen, man, quick shout out.
Hey Josh, I'm gonna tag Josh in that particular clip, and we're gonna say, hey, it's time to help with this
Yeah,
particular book. So
yeah,
this clip is
yeah.
this is gonna go on social media. Also, it's not like my social media is gonna help at all, but hey, maybe when you post it on yours, it'll support a little bit. So
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I appreciate
oh
it.
man, no, that's great. But yeah, I say same thing with like, in starting a podcast and thinking about starting a show and doing something. I sat on this for 2 years. I thought through what I wanted to be, what I wanted to be like, who I wanted my target audience to be. And I finally, interestingly, got to the point where I was like, you know what? It's just going to be my show. I'm going to bring on people that I want to talk to, that I'm interested in having a conversation with, and we'll kind of see where the conversations go from there. But I think a lot of people are so hesitant to even start something for whatever reason. They just don't even start it. And
Yeah,
it took me 2 years, so I'm kind of one of those
yeah.
people. But once they
And I,
start, it's a matter of staying consistent too. So
exactly. And I think that's another, we talked about those things earlier, those, those skills that help me navigate through the NFL. I think that's another thing that helped me ultimately with this book. Man, I'm one of those people that, even though it took 4 years, but I'm like, if I get an idea in my head, I'm gonna go for it. And that's how I was with Merry Maids too. It's like
yep,
I got it, I'm stuck on it. I'm like, let's figure out a way to make this happen. So
I love it.
that's definitely, a tremendous skill to have, man. Just the ability to just say, hey, I planned it, but it's not going to go perfect. But let's see what happens.
But at the end of the day, it's like, who really cares?
Exactly.
I'm doing this thing. I'm doing it to to better myself, to improve myself. And if people like it, they like it. But like it was interesting. I was having a conversation with my dad earlier today, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm not gonna be the guy that posts anything ridiculous online just to get the likes and the impressions. It's like we're gonna try to build this thing the right way. So I think there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of people that see stuff, and they're like, they don't really see the work that goes into building a brand, or to building yourself, or to building your craft, because a lot people like the Hawk Tua girl get famous
Yeah.
overnight, and you're like, oh, she didn't do anything to deserve that. It's like, okay, that's not the vast majority of people. That happens once in in a 1 in a million, quite literally. And that's totally fine, and that's fantastic. But for the vast majority of us, it takes consistency and hard work to get to where we want to be in life. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Talking about that instant gratification that so many of us fall victim to, man. It's just that you see it, you want it, you think it'll happen overnight, but for most of these people, and getting off topic here, but and that's what I love about football, right? Because people turn on the TV and they're like, man, these guys are so lucky, man. Look at Miles Garrett, look at Von Miller, look at Tom Brady. Like, man, if I was them, man, look how lucky these guys are. But what you
yeah,
don't see is, it took 23 years of consistency of hard work, and now you finally seeing a finished product. So, business and podcasting and being an author is no different, man.
yeah.
People only see the surface.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's luck because you worked your ass off. And I think, once again, to your point, people don't really see that at all. We kind of talked about hard times too, and the ups and downs of the W of sports, right? What have been
Yeah.
some of your, just we can kind of go there. We don't have to go there necessarily, but what have been some of your worst moments, on and off the field, kind of in this journey that you had? What have been some of the worst moments, and how have you learned from them across the board?
Man, I generally, man, I like I said, man, I preach positivity, and I believe that I stay positive because I don't really look at most of these things as bad
Yeah,
situations. But there was one that, obviously when I tore my ACL twice in college, that was true adversity, and we all have adversity. I have adversity. I choose to try to look at it a different way because
yeah,
it'll eat you alive if you let it. But when I tore my ACL the first time, I'm like, man, I might not ever play again. And I finally get right, boom, happen again. Now it's like, man, I really might not ever play again. So
yeah,
that was, truly a trying time in my career where, just physically, obviously, but mentally more than anything, man. Anybody who's ever had a major injury like that, ACL, Achilles, neck, back, you really put everything in perspective because it's the possibility that you may never play again, but will you return to, how good you were before the injury is an even bigger question. So, those injuries were, just heart wrenching.
yeah, yeah. Well, any kind of injury, but especially a double ACL tear, that's brutal.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Any
Brutal.
injury, but man, you're talking ACL, and you wake up and the leg went from a strong muscular leg to a piece of jello, man. It's
Yeah, it's awful.
insane, man. Overnight, man, your leg just goes
That was
from
it. That was at FAU though, right?
yeah, that was at
Okay,
FAU.
gotcha,
And
gotcha.
then in the NFL, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying when you're in the league and is it an injury in the league though? I mean, you're obviously going from college trying to get into the league, right? But once you get into the
Yeah.
NFL and then you get injured, and it's your salary, right? It's your pay, it's your lifestyle, it's your career. So is there kind of a different kind of mental approach to that?
Man, luckily I've never had a major injury in the NFL, but I would say that for most guys, being injured in the NFL is a better situation than being injured before you get in the NFL.
Yeah,
Because once you get injured in college, your draft grade goes down. Everybody's just looking at it as another reason not to draft you or to draft you lower or however you look at it higher. But once you're in the NFL, say I'm a first round draft pick and I'm injured, I still have my guaranteed money. I'm with the best, physical therapists in the world, I have the best doctors in the world. And this team's going to do everything they can to make sure I get back on the field. So they're invested in me. They're going to invest in my recovery. But if you're not in the NFL, man, you might not you might not ever even get there
right,
if you're injured in college. So
right.
it's either way, it's trying and it's adversity for sure for any person at any point in time. But I would say in college is it's a little it's a little more you're a little more scared because the unknown is truly unknown. You have no clue
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
yeah. You brought up Josh Allen earlier. As it relates to like mentors and friends and people that kind of guided you on your way. Who have been some of those folks that you played with that have been like true mentors, or even just coaches that have been true mentors to you throughout your
Yeah,
career?
I played with some very good players, and I played with some older guys who had a lot of experience as well. Steve McClendon was a real good person, real good leader when I was with the Jets. Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison with the Buffalo Bills, two guys that give you the shirt off their backs and
Yeah,
just really want to see you develop as a person. Richard Sherman played with him, was a tremendous leader. And the list goes on and on. But one of the
yeah,
and Von Miller, of course, man, playing with Von Miller. Von Miller is truly a pro's pro. He
yeah,
every day he's the same person. Every day he's intentional on what he says, what he eats, who he talks to, how he talks, and it rubs off on everybody. So just being around those guys that have played at that high level and are intentional about it, and they want to like they're not so, you know, insecure where they want to help other people because it's not
yeah.
always the case. Some guys they think they got the secret sauce and they want to keep it to themselves. But guys like I said, Mario Addison, Von Miller, man, they want everyone around them to be just as good as them. So, really appreciative for those guys.
Super cool, super cool. When you think about kind of the future for yourself, because you've now once again you're an NFL athlete, you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, you're a literary advocate, you're doing all these things. What are kind of what's the vision? What are the future goals? I mean, is it president of the United States at this point, or is it? I mean, what are you thinking?
That would be cool, man. I want
Heck
to,
yeah,
like I said, man, talk about being being where your feet are, man. I want to
yeah,
I want to keep pumping out these books, man. I want to get
cool,
to the point where I got 12 to 15 books out. Why not, Why not shoot for the stars, man? I want to be the number one children's book author on the planet.
love it.
That's how my mind works. So if anybody can do it, man, I think I can. So putting in the work here, keep putting out these good books, keep helping these kids learn how to read, sparking the joy of reading. And I really being a president would be cool, but I'm not not too interested, man. I think if anything, maybe 15 years down the line, 10 years down the line, being an athletic director, I think would be very
Yeah,
real fun, cool, rewarding job. And that's my way of that I would want to be involved in athletics, not too, hell bent on, being a head coach or anything like that. I think,
yeah.
what these athletic directors do and what they can do for the university and the lives that they can impact, I really think that's a cool field to be in.
Have things kind of changed since you've had your first child? I mean, now, I mean, just the approach to life and your career and everything else, have things changed slightly, or kind of just maybe provided you an additional motivation to keep moving in the same direction?
Yeah, additional motivation for sure, man. It's just, I don't know if you have any, but like
Not yet.
it's everything they say.
Not yet.
everything they say is true, man. It's just like everything changes when you look at your son. You're like, whoa, like it's truly a unexplainable situation that you got to see it for yourself. But yeah, man, just added motivation to show him the way and make sure everything's situated for him and give him something that he can look up to when he's older.
Super cool. Super cool. Um, I think once again, I first and foremost, I really appreciate you hopping on tonight. I don't want to take up too much of your time across the board, but I do want to kind of give us a moment to talk about anything that we haven't discussed yet, or things we should maybe bring up that we maybe missed up to this point. That you're like, yeah, I'd really like to bring some attention to that. And I think for me, when you talk about the literacy rate and that being kind of your reason for writing these books, I think maybe some facts or some statistics on that front would be kind of cool to bring up and just
All
mention
right, yeah,
too.
yeah. Let me mention these. And yeah, I got all day, man. I
Cool.
got
Love
73%. I got seven. I got
it.
seventy
You
three
got
percent battery on
7%.
my iPad,
All right,
so
cool.
we're good to go. Let me pull up some of these facts that I've written down that really
Sweet.
unbelievable to me.
While you're doing that, this has nothing to do with literacy rates, but it does have to do with access to internet. And during the pandemic, I was working with some charter schools, and I didn't realize how many people in South Carolina didn't have access to internet. And we even had students that we were taking laptops to, and providing them with laptops. But they'd get the laptop and they'd have to take the laptop to the public library or to a Starbucks if they had one nearby, or to like somewhere with public Wi-Fi, because they didn't have Wi-Fi in their house or internet in their house. I was like, that was wild to me. Hundreds of thousands of people in the state.
It's, it's,
Uh,
un- it's unbelievable, right? And
yeah.
that's another thing too. And I'll get into the stats in a minute, but that's another thing to pushes me to help kids become literate because if you can't read, you have no chance of learning how to code, how to use a computer, how to use Microsoft Excel. Like reading is the base fundamental of all further education. If you can't read, you're going to get left behind.
Right.
And that's what's cool. I'm working with a nonprofit, the founder is Chris Wilson. It's Kids Kickstart, and he's
What's the
partnering
name
with
of the
me
nonprofit?
on Kids Kickstart.
Okay, cool. Cool.
And what they do is exactly what you just spoke about. They provide kids that without certain technological equipment, and they provide it with them. We had one event. I did a Delray Beach Boxing Club a couple months ago, and we raffled off an iPad. And this girl won an iPad, and you couldn't believe that she literally was down in tears. Like this is I've never had anything like this. I need this, like just for school, just for everything. And it's like these little things we take for granted. And
Yeah.
I'll be doing another event with the Oakland Park Public Library, and it's the same thing. Kids Kickstart's pledge to donate 6 high-powered computers, to the Oakland Park Public Library, which the kids in that community need as well. So it's just, a lot of us, we take things for granted because we have phones and computers, but some of
Yeah.
these kids don't have a computer, iPad, a phone, or Wi-Fi to use it. So it's really, it's real out there,
Yeah.
But
It's a great
some of the
initiative.
stats that come to mind, yeah, it is, man, because it's needed, and you never know. You can impact one. You might literally change the trajectory of that kid's life. Um, so some stats that jump out to me. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, only 37% of students entering fourth grade are reading at a proficient reading level. And they say if you're not reading at a proficient reading level by fourth grade, you most likely never will be. And if you're not reading proficient level by fourth grade, then that's when we talk about those other stats that you fall into, teenage pregnancy, incarceration, all these things that, just once you're there and you're behind, you're playing catch up, your entire life, really.
Right.
Some more stats. Let's go. Uh, 2 out of 3 children who cannot read proficiently will be incarcerated or on welfare at some point in their life. I think that's a real hard hitting stat.
That's hard.
And 30, that's hard. 32 million adults in America cannot read.
32
So yeah, man,
million
all these stats.
adults
32 million. 32 million
can't
American
read at
adults
like a fourth, fifth grade level, or
can't read
can't
at a
read.
That's probably where the stat goes. They're not reading at a, a basic elementary level. They can't, they're not effective readers. So, all these things that, I think that, we all could just by simply, giving a kid a book, because they say
Yeah.
most of these kids that can't read they don't even access, they don't have access to at least one book at home. So, these kids don't have one book. What would make them,
Yeah.
why would they want to read? It's just
Yeah.
like they don't have books. They don't see their parents reading. They just, it's something that they're not even aware of until it's too late. And then all of a sudden, they're in, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, and they realize they're behind. And by then they lost interest, and now they're falling behind in every category. So,
Right.
just my way to try to get them interested. I'm a pure believer that most of us, we look at reading as a chore. They call that the reluctant reader.
Yeah.
So if you don't like to read, and no one's ever giving you a topic that you actually care about, they're giving you topics on George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and other people that died 200 years ago. That these kids, they should learn about them, but it's not going to get them to pick up their first book. These kids
Yeah.
want to read about animals and planets and sports. So that's what I want to do. I wanted to write a book to to jump out the kids like, hey, I like sports. Let's check it out.
Right. And I think we kind of going back to earlier our conversation about current events and all the things that are super distracting to us on a daily basis. Um, I'd like to think that they wouldn't be near as big of issues globally if we just started with teaching people how to read at a basic level, right? And like
Yeah.
that's like so hard for like your mind to wrap around and think that way when you've been kind of you're blessed with the ability to read and you've been blessed with technology and all these things your entire life. And you kind of get to this point, you're like, okay, simply teaching somebody how to read might solve the vast majority of our problems that we're experiencing. And also kind of taking that back too, it seems like a lot of our problems we don't focus on at a local level, at a country level. Instead, we're so caught up in all the shit elsewhere. It's like there's so many issues here that need to be solved first and foremost. Um, so
Exactly.
I think it's a heck of an initiative. What does it look like? I mean, do you have stats on like reading levels in other countries too? Like how do we compare maybe as a country to others? Do you know?
I don't have those on hand, but I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure we're behind most Western countries, especially Canada and England and all these countries.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure we're far behind. I've been focused on just educating myself on actually what's going on here at
yeah.
the national level and the local level, and that if I can make a dent in my local community, then I think
Yeah.
that's that
Well, you're doing a great thing, and I think I'm going to
mission
go back
is
to this
accomplished.
earlier. If we get Josh Allen to endorse this, then maybe it'll get more national and more global, right?
Yeah, hey man, yeah. If we get a Josh Allen endorsement, man, it's Bills Mafia definitely jump behind
Hey,
it, and
we're gonna
hopefully,
work on it. We're gonna work on it. So if you're a Bills Mafia fan, or if you're a Bills fan in general, if you're a Bills Mafia individual, you got to hop on this and you got to share it to make sure we get the word out. I know a couple of Bills Mafia individuals. They are, whew, they're passionate. They're passionate folks.
man, it's nobody like him, man. And for some reason, there's a lot of like Buffalonians down in South Florida,
Yeah.
but these guys, man, they're acting like just like they're in Buffalo. They're walking around with the Buffalo pants on.
Are
Anybody
they
who plays
jumping on
Buffalo lives in
tables
Buffalo.
in Florida too? I mean, like I feel like that's like the Buffalo things to jump on and break tables at tailgates.
I've seen them jump on tables, but I've heard a couple AAAAs, and anybody who's been to a Bills game know what that is, man. They sing this song and they chant it, and they if somebody sees you with that Bills shirt on, then they'll
Man.
yell at to you from across the street. So nothing like Bills Mafia, man. Those are some of the most loyal and passionate fans, man,
I mean,
I've ever
great
seen.
fans, and I'm not gonna, we talked about not drinking earlier, which is, a good thing to not drink alcohol. But in order for you to get through a Bills game as a fan and it being super cold, I'm assuming the vast majority of those people are drinking alcohol. So that being said, how did you get through games when they were that cold in Buffalo? Because I remember playing once again, I played football games what I thought was cold in the 30s,
Yeah,
but it does not compare to the negative degree, right? So how do you get through a game like
that's a good question. So,
that?
so one, I gotta say, right. So I played FAU. I played for the
Yeah,
Dolphins, and it's extremely hot down here, right? 80, 90 degrees
yeah,
consistently throughout July to October. I will take a cold game in Buffalo any day over a 95-degree, 80% humidity game in South Florida anytime.
Okay.
It's hard to play in the cold, but it's the cold is purely mental, right? Like if you can get it out your head that, okay, it's cold, but this game's gonna be over soon, and there's things I can do to warm up, you can get through it. And then it gradually gets cold in Buffalo, right? Like it starts getting cold in like, October, and then by the time December hits, it's like, okay, I've kind of built up a tolerance to it. But man, in Buffalo, they got everything you can think of, man. You got four layers on. They got hot chocolate on the sidelines, chicken broth. They got the industrial size, heat generators out there. So every time you come off the field, you running over there, you putting on the coat, you're standing in front of the heat fan, you drink a chicken broth there, you're doing what you got to do. So
Uh,
it's tough, and especially for the other guys. Like if the team's coming from like Arizona or LA or Tampa or Miami, they're coming
yeah.
up there, man. Those guys, they have no clue, man. So I remember one game. This is actually in Canada, man, playing Winnipeg against Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And I go to drink some water, and one bottle's frozen, so I can't get any water. And then I look at my teammate, and his eyebrows are froze, his mustache froze, his beard's froze. And I look down and I see icicles like all over. Like, man, this is crazy. So, man, you get used to it, but it's
Yeah.
definitely tough, especially as a D lineman when you're playing with your hands. Like any nick to your fingernail, your hand, it feels like you lost a finger, man. So it's tough
Yeah.
playing. It's playing up
Brutal.
there for sure.
Brutal. And once again, I was a kicker, so it's not like I really was like moving around all that much. And so I'd be standing on the sidelines, like pacing back and forth, trying to get moving. And it's once
Yeah,
again not negative degrees. So like in the 30s, and I'd be frozen. But also South Carolina cold is very different than a Buffalo, New York cold.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but that humidity also hits different too. So I've grown up used to the humidity in the South, and it just kind of is what it is. Um, but I don't know that I would take a cold game over a warm game at the end of the day.
man. So one, I have the sickle cell trait, right? So I think that humidity and that heat just, man, like I'm literally like paralyzed. Like it gets so hot, it's like, man, I lose like 14 pounds of just like I'll weigh in before practice. Maybe I'll be 308. I'll literally come in. I'll be, 294, 290. Like I've lost like 15 to 20 pounds per
The
practice
fact that
sometimes.
you
That's
can
just, and
fluctuate that much is wild in and of itself, too.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely a O line, D line thing, man.
Yeah,
Like all my big guys out there know what I'm talking about. And once you get to that point, like they'll literally hold you out the next practice. Like if you don't gain like 80% of that weight back, they'll hold you out. But yeah, I've had those days, man, where it's like I come out of practice and I've lost like 14 pounds, and it's like you feel it out there. Like you start getting lightheaded. You don't want to move, man. And if when it's a game day or anything like that, it's tough, man. So
so,
you and back to my point, that's physical. That's truly physical. Like there's nothing you can tell yourself. Like,
yeah,
okay, I've lost 15 pounds. Just muscle through it. 'Cause,
yeah.
now that's you're endangering yourself. But when it's cold, literally, man, you got to find a way upstairs to get through it.
So as a free agent, if you're a 305 at your height, what are you roughly at right now? Are you fluctuating a good bit currently, or are you kind of sticking around the same?
So every team I've been on has kind of had like a different target weight. So as
Okay.
long as I stay between like that 290 to 305 range, I can make it work. Like
Yeah.
last year, the Giants called me, right? New York Giants
Yeah.
called, and they told my agent was like, if he's not over 300, we're not gonna take him because that's not what the D coordinator wants. So I remember I was 290. I was like, man, there's a local grocery chain in Publix in Florida called Publix. I don't know if you heard of
Yep.
it, but they
Yep. We
got
got
these
a
things
number
called
of them.
pub subs, man. So yeah, so I went, man. I got like two chicken tender pub subs and a bag of Fritos and like a 32-ounce Powerade. Ate all that, and before I got to New York, I was like 303. So I was like,
That's
as
awesome.
long as I stay in that range, I can maneuver around, wherever I need to be. As long as I'm in that range. Like it might be some teams I had one I'm under 295. Well, looks like I'm having a smoothie for dinner tonight, So
Because you like wrestlers and MMA, I mean fighters, right, in general, are always trying to cut weight in order to hit weight at the end of the day, typically.
yeah,
So I mean, that's the O line, D line way, and that's a completely different world altogether. But to gain that much weight
man,
that quick is crazy to me because I can fluctuate about 10 pounds, but my like 170 to 185, 185 is like my height. But like getting over 185 is super difficult at the end of the day, just because of my size.
man,
So to fluctuate that
man,
much is still crazy to me.
I can go to Cheesecake Factory, get a big slice of red velvet cheesecake, and then go get a burger from a local burger joint and I can literally gain 15
Make it
pounds in a
happen.
couple of days. Easy. Yeah, easily. Easy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You have I mean, we talked about kind of like the cold weather and the warm weather, and trying to gain weight and lose weight for getting on teams. But any crazy stories from games, game time situations? Um, I don't know, just in general, things that have happened throughout your career that you're like, that was a wild day, that was a wild game, can't believe that happened, sort of situation.
Man, one of the things that come to mind is how I actually got my first, shot of regular season football in Cleveland. I don't think I would have never played in Cleveland if it wasn't for that Thursday night football game against the Steelers when that when that big fight happened. Once that fight happened, everyone got suspended, and I'm an undrafted free agent, right? So you're always working against the eight ball as an undrafted free agent. Like nobody wants to give you that chance
Yeah.
to be the first coach to say this guy can play, put him out there on the field. It's always an uphill battle to get that first, experience. Usually someone has to get hurt, and it's a last case scenario. Like I think even when Richard Sherman got his shot, he was a special teams player, and a cornerback actually broke his leg, and then Richard Sherman stepped on the field, and the rest is history. Maybe a similar story with Tom Brady, but man, so that happened in Cleveland when that big fight with the Steelers broke out.
Yeah.
So that was actually I don't think I would have as good as I was doing in practice, as good as I did in the preseason. I would have never got a chance to play if it wasn't for that fight. So everything happens for a reason, man.
Everything
It was
happens
it
for a
was
reason.
chaotic. It was crazy. Yeah, everything happens for a reason.
There are a few guys I can think of right now that I played ball with in high school that then went on to play college ball, and they are still in their process of trying to get on a team. Right? They are like they're grinding, and some of the hardest working guys I've ever met in my entire life. They absolutely deserve it. How many of those guys do you talk to right now that are like kind of like making that transition out of college into the pros? I'm assuming that's probably the vast majority of them, right? But that are
Yeah.
trying to make it, they can't make it, they're struggling. How do you typically? I mean, not even like talk them off a ledge, but like how do you talk through things with those guys and help them to get over their that mental hurdle and that actual hurdle of not being able to get into the league quite yet?
So if that's the one of the things about football is so difficult, right? And it's getting better with the UFL and
Yeah,
all these new leagues popping up. But for the longest, it's been NFL or nothing. And if you come out of college and the NFL doesn't want you, then you're toast. You know what I mean? It's not like baseball where, these guys have these farm leagues and basketball. You can go to Turkey, you can go to Israel and eventually develop and make it work. In football, if they don't see that in you, by immediately after your college career, but maybe even like a year after, then they'll write you off and it's over. So a lot of these guys really struggle with, that that reality that, it may not work out for them. But like I said, luckily, we got the XFL or the UFL, whatever they're calling it now, and that's giving players an outlet to go in there and develop and, get another crack at it. So, I simply tell the guys, if it's something you want, chase it. Chase it, be smart about it, you know, but you I mean, you got time, but you don't got time.
yeah,
So if you're 22 and you came out now and you're doing this until you're like 25, 26, then obviously it's time to start looking at something else. But as of now, man, everybody's route is different. So if you got to go to the UFL, you got to go to the CFL if you believe that you're good and you think you can develop and you believe you have what it takes, go for it.
yeah,
But if it doesn't work out after a certain time, then only you can actually be the judge of the person to say, okay, it's time to hang it up. But I tell the guys to be realistic. You know, believe in themselves, give it everything they got for a couple of years, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And then by then they usually come to grip with it. Then okay, it's time to try something else. But just to
right.
even have that ability to try, I think very is very healthy for the guys to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like being an entrepreneur, doing other things too. Like probably not a bad conversation to start having early on, and saying, "Hey, start thinking about maybe this is bad advice, maybe it's not, but like maybe there are plenty of other things out there for you to do. So maybe start thinking about what that might be early on.
Yeah,
Maybe that's bad advice, but
yeah.
you know,
No, and so I actually got asked this question by an athletic director at a school I spoke at. And he asked me why don't more college players and NFL players actually start looking at something else while they're playing. And I told him that usually for guys in the NFL, we're told that if you're doing something else, then it's because you're distracted. And I won't say any names, but we had probably I think he's a Hall of Fame basketball player, one of the most known basketball players in the world. He came to talk to us at a team I was with. And he told us a story about guys on his team that continue to start restaurants in the off season, and he was like, you know, a lot of you guys have no business doing stuff like that. Just focus on what's going on the court or going on the field. I'm like, man, that's like that's the complete opposite of what we should be telling guys. Like, you shouldn't just tell guys that, you know, shut up and play football, shut up and dribble. Like, of course, be where your feet are. Give everything you have to whatever you're doing. You know, if you're a mailman, if you're a executive at Apple, if whatever, if you whatever you are, give it your all. But who's to say that you can't develop other skills while you're doing that? You know, I think that's ridiculous, and I think that's a culture that's in football that, you know, needs to be taken out. Like, if you're playing football and you're doing this, then you're distracted.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You should only be hearing that. And actually, they say that actually. Well, I'm not gonna say they say. I know for a fact that hurts a lot of guys in their draft grades. If they see guys that have other hobbies that are taking too much of the time, and they think it can be a distraction, then some teams won't touch them.
Yeah. Something you've said multiple times now that's stuck with me is be where your feet are. And I think that in of itself, that is so true for so many guys that are like, hey, I can go do all these things. I'm gonna try out all these different things, right? It's like you got to really be where your feet are and really give it your all, because if you don't, it's not going to be successful. But also be understanding there are other things out there too, right? That you maybe should start thinking about, but it doesn't mean don't be where your feet are, because you have to give everything to what you're currently doing in order to be successful. But it is also good to be understanding of the fact that there are other things out there as well. So when you do end up exiting, or you don't end up getting the league, or you end up leaving the league, you have other things that you can continue doing instead of just thinking that the league is everything for you at the end of the day.
Exactly, because one day it ends for everyone. You know, I don't care if you're Deion Sanders or LeBron James or Tom Brady. You know, excuse me. You have to have other skills to fall back on, especially for the rest of your life. Even if you know you had a say you have a great NFL career and you retire at 32. You know, what are you gonna do for the rest 65 years of your life? Even if you made a gajillion dollars, like you're still gonna want to go out there and be passionate about something. You're gonna want to be
Yeah.
good at it. You want to be knowledgeable at it. You're gonna have connections in that field. So, you know, start while you're playing. You know, go intern somewhere. You know, pick up a book, pick up a skill. You know, try a trade, try anything. You know, just you know, don't limit yourself to one particular sport.
Even if you're Cameron Brown and you stop playing in high school, so it's the same thing, right?
Man, it, yeah, Cameron Brown definitely, man. What would you tell high school Cameron Brown right now?
I don't do that. I think about that all the time, honestly. And I was, that's a good question. But I think a part of me wants to be like, hey, there's a lot more to life for me, because I played baseball, I ran track, and I played football, and like sports were life for me. It's all I did, and I think I grew up just focusing on sports and wanting to play sports in college and wanting to go pro in baseball. Like that was all I thought about. And then 11th grade hit, and once again, this is like looking back on high school days, and you're like, okay, maybe I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, but I do want to keep playing football. And then I switched from being a kicker to then senior year I played cornerback, and it was funny. So I covered like Debo Samuels in high school, right? So like we played against some of these guys that are now obviously phenoms, and I look back on it and I was like, those are some of the best days ever. But like, I obviously was no way, shape, or form the same caliber as these guys, so I, probably should have realized that at the time. But I was super stubborn, super hard headed. But covering those guys, playing with those guys was fantastic. But got a lower back injury, got multiple concussions, broke a wrist, messed up my ankles. Like my body was just not prepared for it, right? So I think looking back on it, I would tell high school me to stay consistent, keep with it, but to your point, be where your feet are, right? I think that would probably be my message to my high school self, is to be where your feet are, enjoy it while you're doing it, because everything comes and it goes. So enjoy what you're doing, do it as fast and as furious as possible and as best as you possibly can, but really be where your feet are at the end of the day. So that one's sticking with me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
I
might have to
love
go get a tattoo. Now I don't have a tattoo, but I might have to go get a tattoo.
it. Hey, you know, just write it down. If you don't get a
Yeah,
tattoo,
it's going on the motivation board for sure. It's going on the motivation
I
board.
love it. I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I think that's what I would definitely tell myself, looking back on kind of the younger version of myself at the end of the day. That's deep though. That's a good one. What would you tell your younger self? What would you tell your younger self?
And I would tell my younger self, believe, man. Just keep believing. Give it everything you got, no matter what you're doing. Give it everything you got, and like we said, man, stay consistent. Because this is what I'm a firm believer in, right? And I tell this to guys who, when we spoke about what I tell these guys that transition out of football. If you're good enough to be a Division 1 player, be an NFL player, NBA player, whatever, Division 2 player, high school starter, if you're good enough to get to that point, you can take that same thing, same tools, same traits, and apply it somewhere else, and you can you'll excel at that as well. So, I tell my high school self, whatever you're doing, man, just literally give it everything you got and believe and stay patient because nothing happens overnight. And when you look back in 4 years, 5 years, 8 years from now, you'll see it pay off. You might not see it now, but even if you can continue to do it. Like I tell myself that now with the book. Like if I continue to do what I'm doing every day now for the next
Yep.
8 years, who knows? Who maybe I will be the the highest selling children's book author in the world. So, that's what I tell myself, and that's what I try to tell
We're
myself
gonna
now
make
as
it
well.
happen, and I think this is the fourth plug, but Josh Allen, please. We
Yeah,
appreciate the endorsement.
yeah, Josh Allen, yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna kind of wrap up with this. You mentioned earlier that football players do like yoga and Pilates in their spare time. Is it true? And this is so I grew up and my mom told me that football players did ballet. Do you know any football players that did ballet?
I don't know any guys that do ballet, but I do know I like to box, and I know a lot of football players like to box and kickbox, and I think that's kind of a form of ballet. You're
Okay.
dancing, you're on your feet, you're constant movement, constant footwork. So I do know a lot of guys that go that route. I know Shaq was a ballet guy. You hear some stories with some old school guys doing it here,
Okay.
man. It would definitely be, it wouldn't hurt you, but I don't know many guys that do it.
Well, she got me into a ballet because she told me the football players did ballet. So
I know Shaq. I think it was Shaquille O'Neal. I think Shaquille O'Neal
okay.
was a big advocate about ballet in like the '90s or back in the day, whenever. But I don't know
That's
any guys
awesome.
personally.
That's awesome. But yeah, yoga and Pilates. I've never done Pilates, but yoga is one of my favorite things to do for being
Yeah,
in a meditative state and calming down, relaxing, and getting into that flow state for sure. Um, well, Brandon, I appreciate it. Once again, we're over an hour here, and I feel like we could keep this conversation going for days. But I just want to once again thank you so much for hopping on, joining the show, providing a bunch of value and information to people today. A lot of things that people might not have known about too. I think the literacy rates in our country. I think that's a huge point that we need to keep hitting on and talking about, and bringing attention to. I know you're doing a lot of that online. It looks like you're marketing it really really well, and starting to get in front of a lot of people. So if there's any way that I can help, let me know. Is there any way that people listening in can also support the cause and maybe bring attention to it themselves?
hey, so one, if you want to find me and see what I'm doing locally, you can find me at Brandon's Books on Instagram or El Sacco, EL_SACKO. I'm going to be starting some initiatives soon where, a supporter wants to, sponsor a homeroom or even just donate one book to a particular, random kid in South Florida or wherever they are. I'm going to start that initiative soon. So you'll be able to press a button, hit donate, and then we'll get that book to that kid or, sponsor that whole classroom. So other than that, just, continue to look for me if you're local, pop up to the events and, just keep these stats in mind. If these kids don't even have one book at home, why not make that their next Christmas gift? So, and I'm not saying my book, I'm saying any book, instead of, getting these kids the latest games or shoes or clothes or toys, whatever, just send them a book and, maybe they won't be as big of a fan when they open up the present, but, in 10 years or so, they'll thank you. So, just try something like that.
Love it. Love it. Well, once again, man, I greatly appreciate it. Look forward to pushing this out here soon and sharing all this information with the world.
Appreciate it, man. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for your time.
No problem.